This hot chick is amazing. After the zombie outbreak, she began researching the weaknesses and motives of the zombies. In just 2.5 days, she wrote a manual titled 100 Things to Do to Avoid Becoming a Zombie. To achieve this, she woke up at 6 a.m. every day, maintaining a positive mental state. She jogged 10 kilometers on the treadmill, maintain a daily exercise routine, improve survival skills. Before the zombie infection spreads further, she must prepare survival supplies. She is rational and will choose the area with lower risk according to her own judgment, effectively avoiding sudden zombie hordes, and adjust the camera angle to confirm that it's functioning properly. While selecting supplies at the supermarket, she can also keep an eye on what's happening outside via her phone. Passing by the cherry blossom cookies, she stared at them for 2.5 seconds, although she really wanted to eat them. To control her sugar intake, she had to give up her favorite treat. Meanwhile, the male lead. It took 2.5 hours. He thoroughly cleaned the junk room that had been piled with trash for 3 years. Looking at his tidied room, he felt an unprecedented sense of relief. When he wanted to reward himself with a day of beer and movies at home, he found that there wasn't a single beer in the refrigerator. His mood crashed. He couldn't find any, not even in the nooks and crannies. To get some draft beer, he decided to go to the supermarket. Meanwhile, a young couple were waiting at home for rescue from the self-defense forces. Zombies were everywhere outside. They had lost hope of survival. Wow! This completely stunned him, because the stairs are full of zombies. So he had to climb the drainpipe to get out. The kind couple invited him in. It's too dangerous outside, it's full of zombies. He explained that he was about to go out for some free shopping. It's fate that we met here. If you don't mind, should I get you anything? As expected, even if the world is ending, we should still be exquisite. The male lead drove his car to the supermarket, finding that there were quite a few more zombies than yesterday. Even if he's surrounded on his bicycle, he wouldn't be able to escape, right? But if he were to endure not drinking beer because of this, he might as well become a zombie. Soon, the male lead arrived at the supermarket entrance. Little did he know, everything he did was being recorded. The male lead was stunned. He didn't expect anyone else to be here, but remembering he'd been singing since he entered, he felt mortified. He was sure she must think he was a strange person. Taking a closer look at the girl in front of him, he noticed her amazing figure. Even with her hat on, her beauty was undeniable. The male lead was so smitten he almost forgot why he came. He explained his reason for being there, but unexpectedly, the girl completely ignored him. He watched her take out her phone, thinking he'd succeeded. But the girl didn't understand him. Then, he ran to the supermarket to buy beer. She didn't consider this a high priority option. The male lead was stunned speechless. It was simply because the girl was a rational person. No matter what she did, she would always assess the priority and the risk level. Someone like the male lead would be an alliance that won't bring her any benefit, and acting together would even lower her survival rate. Wow! The girl had actually seen the truck charging towards them. She could use the truck to crush all the oncoming zombies. That way, she could safely go home, leaving the dumbfounded male protagonist behind. When he finally snapped out of it and wanted to go out and thank her, he found that his bicycle had been crushed by the truck. At that moment, the girl walked past him. Looking at that perfect figure, he also understood what she said. Assessing the risk? I never thought the scenes from zombie movies would actually happen. Then a zombie suddenly appeared. His bicycle was damaged and unusable. Just when he didn't know what to do, he happened to see a bicycle with the keys still in the ignition. It came so easily. Evolved from a bicycle to a pedal car. Now he is not afraid of being chased by zombies anymore. Thinking about it carefully, the zombie tide broke out during rush hour. There are abandoned cars everywhere. Could my pedal car be upgraded? It was already dusk when he returned. He bought the beer he'd been wanting. He even got the critical illness he'd always dreamed of. What a happy day. Just as he was about to invite the young couple for drinks, he found blood everywhere. It seemed they had been murdered. He then returned home. Drinking his beer, the male protagonist couldn't help but sigh. Human life is truly too short. Whether it's 1 day left or 2.5 years, the time he can actually do what he wants to do is really too short. He doesn't even have time to assess so-called risk levels. So he opened the diary he bought, because he worked for a terrible company for 2.5 years, and the things he wanted to do piled up like a mountain. In the end, because of working, he didn't accomplish anything, so he decided to write down his future goals. 100 things I want to do before I become a zombie. He'll slowly work towards achieving the goals he has set. Meanwhile, back at home, the girl was quite satisfied with the supplies she'd gathered. She then plugged in the camera footage, planning to study her outing and the zombies' movements. But she found clips of the male lead. She really didn't understand why someone would be so happy drinking beer during such a difficult time, so happy just for drinking beer. Although she didn't understand the male lead's feelings, she recalled seeing cherry blossom cakes on the shelf. To control her sugar intake, she didn't take it. 2.5 hours ago, the male lead's phone suddenly vibrated continuously. Message notifications kept popping up. He picked up his phone and found, to his surprise, that the signal had been restored. This made him incredibly excited. He never expected the internet to be working again in this post-apocalyptic world. He used to work for a ruthless company. He hadn't seen his friends for 2.5 years. He always had to turn down their invitations for drinks. He really wants to invite them for some draft beer now. He keep trying to chat with them, but no one has replied. From initial excitement to final dejection, he can't help but wonder if his iPhone 15 is broken. But he'd already guessed that the apocalypse had arrived. Even if the network is restored and cell phones are usable, those who have a way to use their cell phones are probably few and far between. Thinking back to his past, he didn't even have time to play with his friends. He didn't understand what he was working for. Suddenly, he remembered his best friend. If it were that guy, he definitely won't die that easily. So he immediately called him. In Shinjuku, on the other side, inside a high-class hotel, his good friend, Kenichi, was about to lose it. He had specifically chosen a high-class hotel to have some fun with his date. Unexpectedly, he encountered a zombie outbreak and is now trapped inside, and his female companion turned into a zombie. He survived on just a bottle of water for 2.5 days. If this continues, he might die. He was filled with despair. He couldn't help but recall his college days, the happy days he spent with the male lead. He was always amused by his silly, cheesy jokes. What precious memories. Just then, his phone vibrated continuously. He picked it up and was completely stunned. He never expected to be able to make one last call to you before he died. The male protagonist was very happy to see the call connected. He said it had been 2.5 years since their last drink. Learning that the other man was currently in Shinjuku, he said he was going to find him. Kenichi didn't expect the male protagonist to be so excited, and still coming to Shinjuku during the apocalypse. Outside, it's full of zombies, it's very dangerous. Before Kenichi could refuse, the call was hung up. He immediately rode his motorcycle towards Shinjuku. He and Kenichi spent 4 happy years together in the university rugby club. They shared 4 years of happy times. Handsome and articulate, he was very popular with women. He was also his best friend for 4 years. But after graduation, he quickly rose through the ranks at a real estate company. He even has a very cute model as a girlfriend. Meanwhile, he joined a sweatshop company, working overtime until he was exhausted. Even his well-meaning advice to quit wasn't heeded. Instead, he lost his temper at him because of his preaching. It's also because we haven't seen each other for a long time. He also wants to formally apologize to Kenichi. Just then, a sound came from outside the hotel. Kenichi was drawn to the sound. Unbeknownst to him, the male lead had tied a rugby ball to a car, using the sound to attract all the nearby zombies, and he quietly slipped into the hotel. Inside the hotel, Kenichi opened the door. Looking at the empty corridor, he didn't know what happened. The gloomy corridor made his heart rate jump to 200 beats per second instantly. Every little sound was amplified infinitely by him. He was afraid that zombies would suddenly attack. When he breathed a sigh of relief, the male lead appeared behind him. It almost scared him to death. Looking at the familiar figure before him, he didn't expect the male lead to actually come. Kenichi was completely dumbfounded. The male lead risked his life to come just to apologize to him. Just then, a horde of zombies suddenly appeared. It was because the male lead's voice was too loud just now, instantly attracting them. Then they immediately ran to the rooftop. But they've got nowhere left to run. They're desperately blocking the zombies. Meanwhile, the male protagonist finds a pile of air conditioning units somewhere to temporarily barricade the doorway. But this won't last. The door will be broken down sooner or later. These things are no match for a horde of zombies. No matter how he thinks about it, he can't find a solution. Just as he's at his wit's end, he sees the male lead at the edge of the rooftop. The only way is to jump across. It's only 2.5 meters to the next building. With a running start, it's easily doable. Kenichi didn't expect the male lead to actually dare to jump. But he looked at the distance to the other building, and considering the height from the ground, a mistake would turn him into mincemeat. He really didn't have the courage to jump. He is so sorry to have made the male lead run all this way. At the last moment, he also wanted to confess to the male lead. He never felt happy with his job. Every day, he put on a smile and talked nonsense to a bunch of bad clients. He's been scolded and complained about. He almost tricked clients into signing contracts, even when he received praise from his boss. And even with a stunningly beautiful model girlfriend, he didn't feel happy at all. All along, he's been a wolf in sheep's clothing, just trying to hide his emptiness, pretending to be happy. He's really just a self-aggrandizing, obnoxious jerk. The person who should apologize the most is him. That's how the opening scene came to be. Finally he decided to jump, but he misjudged the distance and fell mid-air. Luckily, he grabbed the edge of the wall. Was I going to die completely naked? Thinking he wouldn't even be able to preserve his dignity, the male lead grabbed his arm. He used all his strength to pull him up. Kenichi and the main character were rescued like that. The two drank draft beer on the rooftop. He also achieved his goal of drinking with friends until dawn. Just now, the main character was playing a game of Django on the luxurious rooftop. Kenichi looked at the main character's list of 100 things he wanted to do, and couldn't help but think it was a bit ordinary. After all, he had previously worked at a black-hearted company. He never had the chance to do what he wanted, so Kenichi added what he wanted to do to his list. And his goal was to become a comedian. That also became an item on his list. If the male lead hadn't risked his life to save him from the love hotel, he might have died. Since that's the case, he decided to enjoy himself thoroughly with the male lead in the apocalypse. At this moment, the male lead remembered his list, which said he wanted a super big TV. So he set off immediately. He immediately drove his motorcycle with Kenichi towards Ikebukuro. Meanwhile, Kenichi searched the requirements for becoming a comedian. He didn't expect there to be so many requirements. He himself could only perform a completely nude act within 2.5 seconds. The male lead was also curious why he wanted to be a comedian. Actually, he had loved comedy shows since he was a child. He fantasized about one day becoming someone like that. Someone who could bring joy to others. Perhaps that's what a dream is. A dream? The male lead also wondered what his own dream was. Just then, the road ahead was blocked by a large amount of debris and crushed cars. The firefighters who were supposed to extinguish the fire became arsonists instead. Looking at the appliance store so close, it seems an accident is about to happen. A runaway tanker truck is heading towards the protagonist. If he gets hit, he'll be crippled, if not killed. Just when he didn't know what to do, he just saw a subway entrance. And the tanker truck was getting closer. So he decided to take a gamble. It's fate. So the two of them sped through the underground street on their motorcycle. But unexpectedly, they encountered a large number of zombies. With no other choice, the male protagonist had to abandon his beloved motorcycle. He saw a roll-up door that hadn't been closed yet. It seemed like hope, but the male lead thought there might be a place selling giant TVs inside. He slid in. Kenichi was so strong he looked a little clumsy. Then he closed the roll-up door, successfully blocking the zombies. Just when he thought he could relax, a strong light suddenly shone down. What he saw were 3 girls and an older man. The leading girl asked the male protagonist if he had been bitten by or infected with zombies. Seeing other survivors, the male protagonist felt great. He said he wasn't infected. Unbeknownst to him, the girls were extremely disgusted by him. They were surrounded by countless zombies. It was impossible for him to even leave. The uncle trembled at these words. The girl was so scared her legs went weak. Why would they encounter such a thing? Kenichi immediately stood up and comforted the girl. There's plenty of food here. Maybe in a day or two, the half-stiff household will leave. Don't think so pessimistically. And you don't have to worry about food here. But I can't go on without having a drink to calm my nerves. Seeing this, Kenichi also said he could join them for a drink. So he prepared all the side dishes and snacks. When the girls sat down, the male lead was stunned. He quickly asked Kenichi, "Is this the legendary get-together?" When the 3 girls started introducing themselves, the 2 men couldn't contain themselves, because the 3 women in front of them were actually flight attendants. They had just flown back from Los Angeles, and encountered this unlucky situation. Unexpectedly, one of the items on the list was already completed. If there weren't any zombies outside, how wonderful that would be. The women were all trembling with fear. If this continues, his dream mixer will be ruined. So he made up my mind. He decided to chat with a flight attendant. He opened with, "Does Yuka have a boyfriend?" The moment he finished speaking, she replied, "Do you have to ask that now?" Wow, clearly, the atmosphere wasn't right for that kind of conversation. He used to work for exploitative companies. He never had the chance to drink with other women. Then he remembered. At times like this, he should ask Kenichi, the seasoned social butterfly, for help. Little did he know, he managed to strike up a conversation in just 2.5 minutes. The male lead was incredibly envious. It was completely his own personal show. He thought Kenichi had finally discovered him and would get his help. But unexpectedly, he also wanted to get cozy with the flight attendant. If he continued to be so hesitant and missed this opportunity, he will regret it. It's better to be eaten by zombies. Under the lead of the male protagonist, the atmosphere gradually became lively. But how awesome he was just now, now he feels so uncomfortable. Ultimately, the toilet bore the brunt of everything. He also deeply regretted it at this moment. That last scene definitely made him look like a disgusting person. Just then, Yukari came over and touched him gently. Seeing him so distressed, she couldn't help but worry. This scene before her made the male lead feel like his happiness was about to arrive. On the other side, the older man is looking at his thigh bitten by the zombie. He couldn't hold on any longer. His body felt extremely uncomfortable. As his body fell, he instantly became numb. Gradually crawling towards the flight attendant's position, he didn't know the nightmare was about to begin. By the time she noticed, it was already too late. Accompanied by a scream, Kenichi, who was playing poker, was suddenly frightened. When he came out, he found out that the previous stewardess had turned into a zombie. Before he can be shocked, the stewardess rushed directly towards them, but the girl hasn't come back to her senses yet. She was instantly bitten by her unexpected companion. Then, just as she was about to attack Kenichi, the opening scene happened. The flight attendant was knocked flying. Meanwhile, the male protagonist was chatting with Yukari, telling her about his past experiences. 2.5 years ago, he joined a company full of dreams. But it turned out to be a ruthless company. It was completely different from the world he had imagined. He finally quit, citing exploitation by the company. Even now, he feels that what he's been striving for was just a dream painted by others. Yukari wants to be a flight attendant. Is that your dream too? If it's a job you truly like, then you don't need to care about what others think. Thinking back on my dream of becoming a flight attendant, I was so happy when I first became one. But behind it all, there was constant gossip. If it weren't for the male lead, she might have forgotten my dream. She was about to tell the male lead how she felt. But then, an accident happened. A zombie-like uncle suddenly lunged at Yukari. She was bitten before she could react. This unexpected event left the male lead completely unprepared. The scene he least wanted to see still happened. Yukari's neck was bitten. The male lead tried to go to her, but she refused. She understood what would happen next. She didn't want the male lead to see her ugly, zombified form, so she told the male lead everything she'd been wanting to say. Then she pushed him away. Meeting the male lead, and understanding her own feelings, she is very grateful to him. Today was so much fun, like a mixer. And the male lead got the TV he wanted. He also checked off an item on his wish list. That day, the male protagonist recalled his childhood dream. He wanted to be a superhero, a righteous hero who protects humanity from zombies. Therefore, he specifically investigated many methods of fighting zombies. He accidentally discovered something. This was also the best way to fight zombies. Then they came to the aquarium. He almost peed himself when he saw the giant shark. He quickly went to the changing room, because the thing he wanted was there. With it, he could become a superhero. It's the aquarium's special shark-proof suit. It can prevent shark bites. It's woven from titanium and steel fibers. Even the teeth of a large shark can't pierce it. With this suit, even if I'm bitten by a zombie, I won't get hurt. On the other side of the bus, a group of zombies are blocking the road. We can only wait for the surrounding zombies to leave. Unbeknownst to them, in the back, a man is hiding the fact that he's been bitten by a zombie. After his transformation, he instantly attacks the woman beside him. Everyone on the bus is shocked by this scene. They scrambled out of the car, but they were surrounded by zombies. There was no escape. Soon, everyone ran to the vicinity of the aquarium. They saw the entrance, so close. If they could just reach it, they would be saved. But, unsurprisingly, the next second, she twisted her ankle and fell. When she got up, the zombie almost reached her. At the critical moment, the girl was stunned. Watching many people being chased by zombies, his heroic dream was realized. Just then, the hot girl brushed past him. It was a stroke of luck, allowing them to meet again. This time, he absolutely must get her contact information. Accompanied by Kenichi's shout, when he came to his senses, the zombie was already in front of him. He was currently wearing protective gear. If not now, when would he show off? Little did he know, it was only a flimsy protective suit. Although it could prevent bites, the biting force would still be transmitted. He, surrounded and beaten by the infected, called out to Kenichi for help, but he was mercilessly refused. Because there was only one protective suit, he was left to fend for himself. With the gate closing, he never expected his best friend of many years to abandon him like this. 2.5 minutes later, the protagonist, enduring excruciating pain, threw the infected one by one into the sea. It's a good thing the protective suit held up. The most important thing now is that my attempt to act cool failed, and the girl saw me like this. She'll definitely be disgusted with me. He didn't expect being a hero to be so hard. Disheartened, he returned to the aquarium. But seeing the hot girl in front of him, his heart still beat uncontrollably. The male lead explained to Kenichi that he had met her before. Kenichi, being a womanizer, naturally saw through the male lead's subtle intentions. He also encouraged the male lead to approach the girl. In this apocalypse, who knows if they'll ever have another chance to meet. On the other side, the hot girl looked at her phone, studying the aquarium map and thinking about how to escape. At this moment, the male lead walked up to her. He mustered his courage and approached her. "I can't believe we've met again." Little did he know, the hot girl didn't remember him at all. After some explanation, the hot girl recalled what happened that day. He also introduced himself to her. "I can't believe we met again. Maybe it's fate. Can I get your contact information this time?" But he was quickly rejected by the hot girl. After all, she's rational and always thinks about risk mitigation. She doesn't understand what saving these people could bring him. She thinks the male lead's attire is even more strange. Could it be because of his lack of confidence or inferiority complex? Is he imitating the actions or clothing of a rational mission to compensate? Simply put, men who don't receive social affirmation in their daily lives, whose sense of self-worth is unmet, often easily dream of becoming heroes. The sudden reprimand completely stunned the male lead. Even Kenichi couldn't stand it. After all, the male lead saved these people from the zombies. The hot chick didn't deny what the male lead had done, but her risk assessment felt that the male lead's series of actions might put the people important to him at risk. The male lead also thought she was right. Because he wants to be a hero, Kenichi was dragged into danger with him. As mentioned before, if people who can't even do a proper risk assessment are together, it might lower her survival rate. So she once again refused to exchange contact information with the male lead. Just then, the ground shook violently. Strange sounds came from around them. For safety's sake, the male lead plans to go and check it out with Kenichi. When they arrive at a passageway, Kenichi is stunned by what he sees. While everyone else is panicking, the male lead is thinking, if a hero were facing this situation, what would he do? Hilarious. Kenichi was completely dumbfounded. What kind of monster is this? The female lead explained that it's a great hammerhead shark, belonging to the order of the cypriniforms, the family of the porcupine shark. She just didn't know why it was walking on human legs. Could it be that the missing divers were zombified and mutated? When they caught up to the crowd, they found a large number of zombies had somehow appeared. At a loss for what to do, the shark suddenly burst in just now. Without a word, it started devouring the zombie. It also spotted the emergency exit nearby. Taking this opportunity, running inside would most likely ensure safety. But the girl was already so scared. To survive, she desperately grabbed the heroine, pushing her down to buy herself time to escape. It was at that very second that she safely entered the room, accompanied by a violent shaking. Luckily, the door was sturdy enough. Kenichi also breathed a sigh of relief at this moment. His legs went weak with fright. But the male protagonist wondered where the female protagonist had gone. Looking at the girl constantly apologizing beside him, a bad feeling immediately washed over him. Could she still be outside the door? But no matter how hard Kenichi tried, the door wouldn't open. Turning around, he wanted the male lead to help, but he found he was gone too. Outside the door at this moment, a shark was eyeing the female lead. She realized she had made a mistake. She also forgot the negative impact of the fear of human nature. Just as the shark was about to eat her, the male lead burst out of the ventilation shaft, using a rugby tackle to instantly bring the shark down. Looking at the male lead who came to her rescue, she couldn't help but think he was a little handsome, but not very. Human strength is ultimately no match for a shark's, and soon the male lead was thrown off. Looking at the male lead before her, she couldn't understand why he would save her. Watching the shark getting closer and closer, even if it meant death, he would still bravely forge ahead for what he wanted to do. This made her want to go crazy with him once. She asked the male lead about his battle plan. The male lead was stunned. He wasn't thinking that much. With the shark's attack, the heroine instantly thought of an idea. Although it was a plan so stupid she herself couldn't believe it, would he even believe her? The male lead agreed without hesitation. Kenichi crawled over at that moment, but looking at the shark before them, his whole body trembled uncontrollably. On the other hand, after they finalized the plan, the soldiers split into two groups to escape, prioritizing time. The male lead would attract the sharks. The female lead would go to find supplies. The ampullae of the shark are its weakness. They are on the surface of its head. It has an organ that can sense voltage as low as 1/1,000,000th of a volt. This also means they can sense the faint electrical currents produced by the muscles of small fish. They use this to catch prey. If you directly contact those sensitive organs, you can conduct the electrical currents of human muscle activity, causing the shark to become disoriented, and subsequently, collapse instantly. And the batteries in front of us are the most important supplies for the operation. On the other side, the male protagonist was violently flung by the shark's tail. He crashed through a cabinet and landed on the ground. Even so, he was temporarily unable to move. He didn't give up trying to buy time. But the violent collision caused him extreme pain. The shark was gradually approaching. Just then, Kenichi suddenly shouted loudly. Somehow, he had stripped naked again. He used his anus to frantically taunt the shark. This also bought the male lead some time. He didn't expect the plan to actually succeed. But looking at the scene before him, he couldn't help but find it amusing. And so, they left the aquarium. The male lead had also fulfilled his own heroic dream. Heroes are like that, saving humanity and then quietly leaving. Kenichi curiously asked the female lead following behind him, "Don't you plan to leave with them?" After this incident, she's also had enough of the risks that come with group actions. Kenichi offered support, saying she and the male lead cooperated perfectly. He also wanted to invite her to join them, but was quickly rejected. His heart was broken after being rejected twice in one day. But she accidentally saw the male lead's notebook. 100 things to do before I become a zombie. Her top priority was things to do in this apocalypse to avoid becoming a zombie. Looking at the male lead's notebook, it was completely opposite to her plan. So, it's different from your 100 things to do before I become a zombie list. Their lifestyles are vastly different. One is struggling for survival, the other for life. Even after giving him warnings about the risks, the male lead still came to rescue the stranger, and he put his good companion in danger. They were even flirting in such deadly situation. Then he returned to the car. The female lead also stated that she will be searching for a safe place in this country. The male lead replied, "I'm just not sure if there is such a place." Then take out his contact information to keep contact with her. If a zombie crisis breaks out in the world, what are the 100 things you most want to do? The hero's 15th wish is, he actually won a solid gold watch that is very expensive. After all, I will work in a black-hearted enterprise for the rest of my life. I can't afford a watch like that either. That day, the male lead and Kenichi were packing their bags, preparing to return to their hometown, Gunma. Looking at the pile of necessities before them was a real headache. They might even encounter beautiful women on the road and spend a spring night together. They also needed to pack spare clothes. However, the male lead was rather absurd. He directly packed his video game console and toy gun as necessities. Kenichi was shocked. If he went out like this, he'd starve to death. Soon, the male lead got on his prized possession. The two prepared to leave Tokyo for Gunma. Normally, it would take 2.5 hours by highway. But given the current situation, it might become a long journey. So there's one thing they absolutely must prepare. Kenichi initially thought the male lead was talking about a gun. Little did they know that when they arrived at the campsite, a familiar figure appeared beside them. After all, she had said she was going to the countryside, to actually meet her here again. Whether it's the first or second time they've met, it's simply fate. He confidently invited her to join him, but she was instantly rejected. After all, she knew that going with the male lead would cost her several lives. It wouldn't benefit her either. Although she appreciated the male lead's invitation, she still refused. Kenichi asked her if she had a driver's license and why she was there. She said she didn't. But during these extraordinary times, as a mobile means of reducing risk, RVs are a very reasonable tool. They often appear in zombie movies. They soon arrived at the exhibition hall. The two of them were instantly excited. RVs were everywhere. Seeing them, both the female protagonists were speechless. I plan to find the best car model for my needs right now. If I'll be driving on paved roads and mountain roads, an SUV might be a better choice. Considering the difficulty of refueling, a hybrid vehicle is the top choice. And this car happens to meet her requirements perfectly. Just then, a call came. It turns out the male lead and his companions were shocked by the price. A camper van costing over 20 million. It's practically a mobile suite. Just one glance and it became the male lead's dream car. Kenichi also thought it would make picking up girls much easier. But the female lead thought it was all style and no substance. I even think it's not as good as the car she chose. She thinks one should make rational judgments in the apocalypse. However, as soon as she finished speaking, the heroine, whose little secret had been discovered, blushed. Just then, countless zombies suddenly appeared and surrounded them. They, who hadn't had time to react, could only randomly choose an RV. Luckily, the key was already in the ignition. Just like that. He didn't get to choose my dream RV. It's a little disappointing, but he still fulfilled his wish. Kenichi was driving his motorcycle on the road, and the protagonist noticed the highway was eerily quiet. This road is usually congested. Now there aren't even any cars left. It's also possible that when the infection spread to the city center, people on the road drove away. Just then, road spikes appeared ahead. By the time Kenichi reacted, he couldn't stop the car. The male protagonist ran over there, very worried. Kenichi was covered in wounds. The female lead also got out of the car to check. When she discovered it was tire spikes, she instantly felt a sense of foreboding. Just as she thought, several large buses suddenly appeared, blocking their path. As the male lead looked at the fat man in front of him, fear welled up inside him. And he's the small fry leader of the male lead's exploitative company. His heart rate shot up the moment he saw him. His stomach felt like it was churning. He couldn't even regulate my breathing. Little did he know, this is a leftover effect of being a workaholic. While working at that exploitative company, he was practically scolded every day by this leader. Over time, a deep-seated fear gradually developed within me. The boss looked at the situation before him. The tire was flat. Kenichi also seemed to need immediate medical attention. He wanted to kindly help the male lead. They had food and spare tires in the service area. Even medical equipment and supplies were very plentiful. Just come over and we'll change your tire immediately. We'll bandage and treat your friend. Meeting like this in the apocalypse is fate. Wow. Hearing this, the female lead understood. They were behind all of this. First, they set up tire puncturing devices on the road to destroy cars. After injuring people, they seize the opportunity to take advantage of them. They keep people as laborers. It's all a setup. The boss couldn't deny it either. After all, the roadblocks, supplies, and the safety of the service area were all earned through sweat and hard labor. In this post-apocalyptic environment, to protect important companions from the zombies, setting up some traps was unavoidable. Although the heroine wasn't happy, the sound of the car crash just now has already attracted the zombies' attention. The male lead was extremely flustered. He desperately wanted to refuse. He had only just escaped from that exploitative company. But Kenichi was in terrible shape. There were zombies all around. For his most important friend, he agreed. Then he arrived at the service area. Looking at the exhausted person still working before him, he couldn't help but recall his own days as a salaryman. Fortunately, Kenichi received timely first aid and treatment. It was only a few broken ribs. The female lead also told Kenichi to take good care of his injuries. He just needs to endure for 2.5 days. The next morning, the male lead just kept working. It seemed like he'd returned to the era of exploitative companies. The next scene completely stunned him. He never expected that even the zombies were working. As long as he used them properly, they could become the company's workforce. And you are the same as them. You're just a cog in the company machine. Your value is simply your obedience to my instructions. I hope you understand your own worth, and do your work properly here. Kenichi on the other hand doesn't understand why the male lead is so afraid of his boss. The female lead thinks it's probably because he can't forget. No matter how unreasonable the control is, even if I understand it intellectually, I can't forget the fear I felt at that time. That day, the leader held a welcome party for the male lead, also to thank everyone for their day and night work. Everyone was happily eating. However, our poor male lead was still doing manual labor. It's his own welcome party. Why did it turn out like this? On the other hand, when the older woman tried to pour a drink for the leader, he violently knocked him away. It was simply because he felt that the beer touched by the older woman would have an unpleasant smell. So he picked up a bottle of draft beer, immediately noticed the woman in the distance, and directly beckoned her to come pour him a drink. Although she is not very willing, after all, they are currently dependent on others, so as not to add more work to the male lead, she accepted it. However, the boss looked at the female lead with lecherous eyes, his mind seemingly filled with impure thoughts. He then finished his draft beer in one gulp, and poured a full glass for the female lead as well. Looking at her aloof demeanor, it means if you don't drink, it's equivalent to disrespecting your superior. The female lead took a deep breath, apparently not wanting to exchange too many pleasantries with him. She picked up her wine glass and downed it in one go. Not bad. So straightforward. I really wish you'd drink something else. Then she looked at the male lead beside her. He called him over, intending to show off his authority. He asked the male lead to bring a bottle of draft beer. However, when it was handed to him, he found the beer was at room temperature. He was instantly ashamed and furious. He picked up the beer and smashed it. They ate his food and drank his drinks here, and he even helped them repair their car. You can't even do a small thing right. A fool like you should just shut your mouth and not think. Just do as I say. The female lead hears her superiors menacing and can't help but recall her childhood, when she was 2.5 years old, and her father constantly repeated the word must in her ear. She even thought her name was Must, because her father, when he was young, went to America alone and built a large enterprise through ruthless means. Just like her life, it was all arranged by her father. She had to complete whatever he arranged. She had to persevere. Therefore, her childhood wasn't happy. She even lived in her father's shadow. She also thought about rebelling against her father. The only answer she got was simply must. Watching the male lead constantly being KTV, even when he accidentally made a mistake, he was afraid of being punished. Facing a foul-mouthed leader, the male lead gradually lost his ability to think. It seems I've become nothing more than an obedient being, just like I was as a child, facing my father. I lived in his shadow. Then, she returned to the car. She accidentally knocked over the man's backpack. She accidentally discovered a notebook sticking out. Curious, she decided to pick it up and take a look. After all, it was their first meeting. The male lead kept talking about his dreams. She also wanted to understand what kind of person he was. She looked at the notebook, filled with things he wanted to do. She couldn't help but smile. It was the opposite of what she had written. It was the opposite of her 100 things to do to avoid becoming a housewife handbook. She seemed to be affected by the male lead's emotions at the time. She also wrote down things she wanted to do in her notebook. It's afternoon. 2.5 days have passed. It's the agreed date to finish working for him. Now they're ready to leave. But the male lead is completely knocked down. Clearly, he's lost his ability to think. The female lead looks at him like that. She thinks he's so stupid. Do I have to keep working here just for this? Anyway, I doubt we'll ever see each other again. So I'll teach him one more thing before I go. Those people who constantly boss you around and exploit you are simply lacking in self-confidence. They are people who can't get their desires fulfilled. They think highly of themselves, and besides attacking others, they simply don't know how to communicate with others. So to get affirmation from others, even if it's just a tiny bit, they might find a little solace in you, a workaholic like this. So they want you to submit, to be at their beck and call, even constantly putting pressure on you. Before, I was just like you, living in my father's shadow. But thanks to you, she will never again give everything she has to anyone. I will decide my own life. No one can stop my will. At this moment, the male lead awakened. He thanked him for treating Kenichi and fixing his car, but starting today, he will leave here. He never wants to be involved with you again. This time when we leave, we'll never see each other again. Even being eaten by zombies is a good ending. If I can't do what I want to do, I'd rather be like a zombie, living like a walking corpse. Just then, the truck door suddenly opened, and a horde of zombies suddenly rushed out. Everyone was scared and ran away. In an instant, the service station became a zombie paradise. Luckily, they escaped to the roof of the car. They also helped the survivors escape the zombies' pursuit. Little did they know, their overweight leader, his fat body smelled particularly attractive to the zombies. Anyone else wouldn't have bothered saving this useless leader. But the protagonist noticed that the dining car was below. He seemed to have thought of a plan. He got his men to cooperate with his command. On the other side, the leader tripped and fell. Looking at the zombies that were so close, he felt like he was going to shit himself. But just then, the male protagonist appeared in front of him in a food truck. Then, he smoothly climbed onto the roof. He used all his might to rescue the leader from the zombie's mouth. Then, truck after truck approached continuously, instantly encircling the escaping zombies. The two were completely stunned. With gas continuously leaking, the male protagonist took out a burning stick and lit it. Grabbing the leader's hand, he instantly jumped out. He threw his burning stick into the air. Watching the zombie horde get wiped out, everyone was very grateful to the male lead. Although the female lead thought he was very reckless, he was really cool at that moment. 2.5 hours earlier, the male lead and his group were on their way to the horses, when they found a truck surrounded by a group of zombies. It seems there are survivors inside. The tire is stuck, we can't move. Hearing this, the male protagonist gets a little excited, because his shark-proof suit is almost moldy. He hasn't shown off his skills in a long time and feels uncomfortable. The male protagonist suddenly freezes, because a warrior in armor suddenly appears before him. He holds a long sword and fiercely splits the zombie in two. All three were stunned. The male lead looked on with admiration. When she took off her helmet, she turned out to be a blonde-haired, blue-eyed foreign girl. Her name is B. She came all the way from Germany, yearning for Japanese sashimi, including Mount Fuji in Japan. She even learned a lot and decided to come and see. Just then, the male lead next to her opened the truck and found it full of fresh, refrigerated fish. Bea explained there was a reason. She needed to deliver these fresh fish to someone, but the truck was unusable. She wanted to ask everyone for help. Can they send her to Takasaki City along with the fish? Kenichi is also undecided. The female lead thinks the risk of approaching the city is too high. Unfortunately, the male lead's thinking is different. He asks why they need to transport the fish. Bea explains, ever since she was a child, she first learned about Japanese culture through television. So she decided she must go to Japan someday. She worked every day, saving up to buy a plane ticket. When she finally arrived at the airport, everyone around her suddenly turned into zombies. The beautiful Japan she had longed for vanished without a trace. But she didn't want to give up. She wanted to experience the Japanese culture she had longed for many years. Several charming cities. Finally, she found him in Gunma province. The last remaining sushi god is still alive. Both their cerebellums suddenly atrophied. He said that the boss said as long as I deliver fresh fish to his shop, he'll make me all-you-can-eat sushi. He even made a reservation over the phone. Hearing this, the heroine and Kenichi seemed speechless. Since we've decided to help, hurry up and pack the fresh fish now. The longer you wait, the less fresher it will become. Both of them looked speechless, under the guise of helping. Actually, they just wanted to eat it themselves. 2.5 hours later, they arrived in Takasaki City. According to the map, the sushi restaurant is deep in the alley ahead. But she made the reservation 3 days ago. She hoped the boss is safe and sound. However, unexpectedly, the alley was full of zombies. They could barely see the road. Like this, they won't be able to reach the sushi restaurant. But looking at the male lead and B, they seem ready to charge through. Although the heroine felt it wasn't rational, she glanced at the map in her hand and seemed to think of a good solution. Instantly transforming into a military strategist, as long as they followed her instructions, she guaranteed everyone could eat sushi. Their plan was to use Kenichi to lure the zombies, then have the attract and draw the zombies' fire. The sound will attract all the surrounding zombies. When the nearby zombies are all gathered together, everything is ready. He'll throw the alcohol I collected earlier hard at the zombie horde below. This will create a chain reaction of burning corpses. If nothing unexpected happens, something unexpected will happen. A large number of zombies suddenly rushed over. The matches suddenly wouldn't light. If this continues, we're all doomed. The zombies are breaking through the encirclement. Bea's heart suddenly felt uneasy. That's just an excuse for not trying. It's not about whether you can do it, but whether you want to, in your heart. Even so, I was impulsively driven to do it. Watching the male lead jump in without hesitation, she couldn't help but recall the first time I saw sparkling sushi on TV as a child. A seed was planted in her heart, and the man before her, to help her achieve my dream, was willing to go to such lengths. He doesn't hesitate to stand alone against the horde of zombies. Is this what they call the spirit of a warrior? Just as he was surrounded, Bea made up her mind. She would no longer be lost. She fiercely struck at the surrounding zombies, as if to sever her own uneasy feelings. She also deeply regretted letting the male lead see her vulnerable side. The two of them instantly activated ninja mode. Wow! But just the two of them couldn't possibly handle the surrounding zombies. At this rate, they'll only be overwhelmed. Suddenly, a drone flew overhead. Recalling before they came, the female lead had found a megaphone just in case, though she wasn't sure if it would be useful. But it's definitely right to prepare beforehand. Look, the zombies are all drawn in by the sound. Is this the power of the strategist? The zombies are all lured near the gas station. Kenichi holds a Molotov cocktail. He uses toy sounds to attract the zombies. Plus, the fuel nozzle is constantly dispensing fuel. Just like that, they arrived safely at the sushi restaurant. Looking at the glistening sushi before them, it was truly a delicacy. The firm texture of the fish, its just right sweetness, combined with the rice melting slowly in their mouths, without even chewing. Even the preparation techniques were impeccable. The chef didn't expect. Even if it's the end of the world, there are still people coming to the shop to eat sushi. Eat all you want today, everyone. Bea looked at the sushi in front of her, swallowing hard. She dipped it in a little soy sauce. After she took a bite, tears welled up in her eyes. Is this the taste I've always dreamed of? Right now, feel incredibly happy. This is the joy that food brings. So, the male lead also fulfilled his wish of eating all you can eat. That day, the male protagonist was on his way back to his hometown, suddenly discovered the necessary tunnel was blocked by trucks. Unexpectedly, a large number of zombies were trapped inside the tunnel. It seemed endless. Has the village fallen? Fortunately, I didn't recognize any of the zombies inside. This suggests that the village is most likely safe. I guess the villagers gathered all the zombies together for quarantine, to prevent everyone from being infected. Now the only way is to go through the forest, to get around the mountain. However, not long after they started walking, a shout rang out. Looking back, an old man was being chased by a boar zombie. Get down! The old man's name is Kumano Masaru. He came here to find a place to live. He didn't expect to suddenly encounter a wild boar. He is very grateful for their help, but the heroine wonders if there will be a safe place here. After they passed through the jungle, what met their eyes was a half-finished treehouse. Little did they know, the old man was a skilled carpenter. The branches of this oak tree are quite thick. Even its branches can support the weight of the treehouse. The male lead's eyes lit up. He even wanted to help. After all, there might be more than one boar. Many hands make light work. In this post-apocalyptic world, building a place to forget worldly worries, a secret base where you can fully enjoy a carefree life, a design close to nature, is also everyone's dream house. In this one and only life, building a treehouse with your own hands, isn't that a wonderful thing? Soon they began to help. It's hard to judge the distance between the trees with the naked eye. If you add water to the pipe, it will be clear at a glance. After the old man's series of operations, they both seem to have learned a lot. Things like tree houses, the methods of construction differ greatly depending on the type of wood. What kind of houses can be built? What method should I use to make it? The trees themselves will slowly tell you. If you don't know what to do, ask the forest for help. After seeing the trees, carefully consider the surrounding environment. By doing so, the treehouse will naturally blend into the forest. In this way, you can hear the sounds of the forest. While thinking, also pay attention to the surrounding trees, as if he wants to take in everything in the world. Seeing the male lead's creations, he seems quite talented. His son also loved making wooden houses when he was little. Unfortunately, he was always clumsy. When the male lead asked about his son, the surroundings suddenly fell silent. Because of his son was eaten by his wife, right in front of him. So he needs to build enough for both of them. He has to finish the treehouse. Now he's all alone. So he plans to take his time working on it by himself. After everyone's continuous efforts, the treehouse was quickly built. Thanks to everyone's hard work, the dream house was thus born. The male lead also fulfilled his wish. Soon it was time to part ways. Although it was a little reluctant, the old man said he would always be in this forest, and they could come anytime if they needed help. Just like that, they set off on their journey home. It just seems a little dangerous. Kenichi was almost scared to death. This road was once called the Man-Eating Wasp Trail. Back then, it killed quite a few climbers. Before the tunnel was dug, this road was the only connection between their village and the outside world. I heard that this village was a place where criminals were exiled in ancient times. I almost couldn't take it anymore along the way. After 2.5 hours of travel, the male lead finally arrived at his hometown where he had lived since childhood. Looking at it like this, it seems not to have been destroyed by zombies. The closer he got to his hometown, the male lead couldn't help but recall that after growing up, he never seemed to return to repay his parents. My parents' birthdays are the first time I received my salary. There were so many opportunities. Why have I never thought about it before? But this time, I must properly show my filial piety to my parents. However, after seeing the actual village, everyone was stunned. It was dilapidated everywhere. There wasn't a single soul in the village. Were they really attacked? They didn't expect everyone to be having a party. The old man next door saw someone coming. Isn't that the son of the Tiandao family? When his mother saw him return, she was also stunned. Seeing that his parents were safe, he breathed a sigh of relief. Tears welled up. He apologized to my parents. For the past 2.5 years, he has been too busy with work, and hasn't had time to come back and visit them. He is truly sorry. Hearing this, the father slowly stood up. He expected a hug from his father. Looking at the companions who returned with him, you must have suffered a lot along the way. There are many vacant rooms here. Feel free to choose one. He still had farm work to do, so he left. After returning home, mother prepared a sumptuous meal. Bea's eyes lit up. Is this tempura? Kenichi ate without hesitation. Eating slowly is a disrespect to good food. The female lead is curious if the village has always been self-sufficient. Her mother says that their village is very remote. So a long time ago, they relied on farming and hunting to survive. She doesn't know who spread the rumor that the village is safe. Many outsiders came here to seek refuge. But among the refugees were infected people. After mutation occurred, it bit everyone around. So the village had no choice but to seal off the tunnel. The infected were all isolated inside. The village population dwindled. Many houses were left unoccupied. So some houses were distributed to people to live in. B, upon hearing this, asked the male lead if he wanted to renovate the old house and add it to the list. Let's do it. He coaxed his mother, who was washing dishes, to sit in the living room. He took out the super popular small chicken-shaped buns he brought back from Tokyo and gave them to his mother. Then he gave her a massage. And he told her about his trip. Seeing his actions, she was very happy. But he must be very tired after such a long journey. She hoped he can get a good rest. Just then, father came back. Since everything's alright, he let the male lead go out and help. They tilled the land for 2.5 hours like that. Afterwards, they went to the stream to wash the fruit. He couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. He doesn't even know how to show my filial piety to my parents. On the other hand, his father seemed to be in a lot of pain. He coughed up blood. He also knew his time was running out. On their way back, 4 people approached them. As the main character brushed past them, he sensed something was wrong. Because that direction was a tunnel filled with abandoned houses. Night fell. The son found his father. He planned for them to have a good drink together. After so long, he gradually realized his father had aged a lot. Upon closer inspection, he was almost completely bald. I've been working away from home for so long, and I've neglected my family's health. I haven't seen them in a while, and they've become much thinner. So he made up my mind and said to his father, "Ever since I returned to the village, I've been thinking. Although I longed for the big city when I was a child, looking back, I realized that life in the village is actually very happy. The fields are so large, and it's very tiring for one person to work them. So he wanted to stay and help his father." Hearing this, his father felt that staying cooped up in the village was pointless. A man should live with bigger dreams. Do you know what it feels like when you look back at Earth from the vastness of space? It's like graduating from school and entering society, or leaving the village for a big city. Only then will you understand how small the world you've known is. But at the same time, humanity is but a tiny speck in this vast universe, just an insignificant existence. His father said, "Don't laugh, but my childhood dream was to be an astronaut. But my IQ wasn't high enough, so I never achieved it." Hearing this, the male protagonist couldn't help but think his father's dream was really cool. What his father really wanted to tell him was, compared to the 13.8 billion year history of the universe, a lifetime of 80 years is just tiny seconds. So don't stay cooped up in a small village like this. You need to go see the wider world. You should even have your own dreams. Strive towards your dreams. If a man doesn't have dreams, what's the difference between him and a salted fish? But speaking of which, he feel the male lead's new hairstyle. It's like seeing a ghost at night. Little did they know, this dreadlocks hairstyle was one of the male lead's wishes. It was done by 3 makeup masters in the village. Meanwhile, the antisocial fat man secretly took the car keys. His accomplice's woman went to the shop and cut off the power. Immediately after, she drove away the excavator that was blocking the zombie house, releasing all the zombies in the tunnel. Their goal was to use the zombies to wreak havoc in the village, and also to take revenge on the protagonist and his popular friends. When the protagonist discovered it, the village was already ablaze. A large number of zombies swarmed in frantically. The once peaceful village was instantly enveloped in fear. On the other hand, the female protagonist, noticing something was wrong, she quickly ushered the villagers into the houses for shelter. But just then, 2 zombies suddenly attacked her. In this critical moment, the hunters arrived in time with their hunting rifles. But unfortunately, they were outnumbered. They could only take shelter in the houses. Watching everyone hide in the houses was truly uninteresting. So he lit the explosives in his hand and wildly bombed the villagers' shelter. Meanwhile, Kenichi, carrying a child, was being chased by the zombies. At the critical moment, he arrived and cut down the zombie. Soon, the male and female leads also ran over. Seeing everyone was safe, they breathed a sigh of relief. But the situation was urgent, and there was no time for idle chat. The top priority is to arrange for the villagers to escape. But the voltage of the electric fence originally surrounding the village was only used to deter wild boars and zombies. But after being sabotaged, the voltage has reached its maximum. Humans can't withstand it at all. Seeing this, the heroine immediately picked up a stick nearby. She wanted to help the person who was electrocuted. She had to use a non-conductive material. Then she had to forcefully knock Kenichi away from the power source. After Kenichi risked his life, he also realized that someone must have increased the voltage. And then they destroyed the ground fault circuit interrupter. The electric fence that originally protected the villagers now trapped them inside. Just then, a voice sounded. A gang of antisocial individuals slowly drove in with an excavator. A horde of zombies followed closely behind. Even if Kenichi is stupid, he understands that this is all the work of Himura, the man before him. Seeing the list in the notebook, the male protagonist was a little surprised. But their wish lists were diametrically opposed. The male lead is fulfilling his own wish, while Himura is seeking revenge on society to achieve his goal. And the 38th wish is precisely to witness firsthand the male lead's complete transformation into a zombie. Kenichi doesn't understand. What deep-seated hatred does the male lead have against him to the point of turning the village into hell? Himura said angrily. He has disliked the male lead since college. Seeing him carefree every day, enjoying life, that smug face drove him, to the brink. When the zombie outbreak happened, his inner darkness erupted. To enjoy his last summer vacation, he gathered a group of antisocial individuals to wreak havoc without restraint. Hearing this, the male lead thought, life is only lived once. He strongly agrees with wanting to enjoy life to the fullest. But, if you want to claim your own freedom, then you should also respect the freedom of others. However, you're taking the freedom of the villagers who are desperately trying to live their lives as something you want to do. 2.5 minutes ago, several people were preparing to split up. But Kenichi unexpectedly found the little girl running away, only because the little dog that had been with her for many years was missing. She initially thought the dog had met with an accident, but unexpectedly, "Chalu, it's this late, why are you still messing around?" At this time, Kenichi, who was closely following, covered her mouth. There were constantly zombies passing by outside the room. "If we're discovered, we're done for." The little girl explained that her parents had died when the disaster struck. She only had her little dog left as family. Suddenly, it seemed like someone outside had noticed their presence. Seeing this, Kenichi used a ladder to take the little girl up to the roof to hide. Even if zombies are powerful, they definitely wouldn't climb ladders. However, as soon as the words left his mouth, a figure slowly appeared. It was the old man from the antisocial group, coming to stop them. Because he, as a member of the lower class, constantly hit walls, he lived each day without finding a place to belong. After the zombie tide broke out, his heart gradually twisted. Seeing others living with such overflowing smiles makes him incredibly uncomfortable. He viciously shoved Kenichi towards the edge. He intended to let him fall and feed the zombies. Suddenly, after noticing the latrine nearby, Kenichi conceived a perfect plan. He gripped the old man's pitchfork tightly. He actually wanted to push him down. So be it. Come down with him. The moment they fell, the old man was dumbfounded. He had absolutely no idea what Kenichi was doing. Little did he know that when he saw the manure pit, he thought of one thing. How exactly did the corpses react to them? Was it movement, sound, smell, or body temperature? He just needed to eliminate those factors, so the zombies wouldn't notice him. Then he aimed for the latrine nearby. Without hesitation, he fell in. Seeing Kenichi's decisive action, the old man, terrified, scrambled away from the zombies. Upon seeing the electric fence, he thought he could climb over it for a chance of survival. Little did he know, his companions had already destroyed it, so the old man's offline. Hilarious. Meanwhile, the heroine arrives at the villagers' rooms and wants to help them escape. The flimsy wooden door is no match for the zombie horde, but the villagers don't want to leave. Because the house is full of elderly people with limited mobility, there's no need to worry about these elderly people who don't have much time left. Let's first figure out how to survive. Suddenly, zombies kept banging on the windows of the house. If this continues, they definitely won't be able to escape. Seeing this, the female protagonist loudly attracted the zombies' attention, trying to use herself to lure away the nearby zombies. Tell them not to give up, only to realize later that this action completely defies the logic of risk assessment. Little did she know, the direction she ran in was being watched intently by the fat man hiding nearby. When she hid, the heroine ran away after hearing the fat man coming. Just thinking about it makes her 100 times more disgusted than the zombies. If she were forced to kiss those thick lips, she'd rather be eaten by zombies. Meanwhile, Old Man Yen learned that the heroine had gone alone to lure the zombies away to prevent them from being attacked. These old men, who can barely walk properly, couldn't go save her. Old Man Yen was a little angry when he heard this. Have there been any wishes that came true before? The land reform led to a large-scale decline in business. Didn't we also grit our teeth and persevere through it, clinging tightly to our hose? We've repeatedly faced the devastation of typhoons, scorching summers, and other natural disasters. But we still gritted our teeth and endured. I believe things will get better in the future. So isn't that how we've lived to this day? The female lead, having escaped a disaster, finally breathes a sigh of relief. Seeing things weren't going well, the overweight man decided to forcibly kiss the heroine to fulfill his desire. At the critical moment, the elderly people stepped forward. That's how the overweight man was taken down. On the other hand, B and the black-haired girl who caught up engaged in an intense battle, but the opponent had a chainsaw, causing her to retreat steadily. The black-haired girl was the fourth-place winner in the National High School Kendo Selection Tournament for 2 consecutive years. B, wielding a katana, could only focus on defense. In no time, all the blades were rolled up. At this rate, losing is only a matter of time. Plus, the chainsaw's noise is constantly attracting nearby zombies. Seeing this, the black-haired girl decided to finish it quickly. It's simply because she's incredibly self-centered. As long as someone disobeys her, she just thought the other person must be wrong. Anyone who stood in her way would become a zombie. B didn't agree. In her country, supermarket clerks would greet customers while chewing gum. Birthday parties are hosted and paid for by the birthday person. Things that seem illogical to you are actually quite normal for us. Suddenly B leaped backward high. She grabbed the water wheel behind her while the black-haired girl was surprised. This attracted the surrounding zombies. She used the horde of zombies to destroy the water wheel. This would cut off the power supply. Thus, the electric fence wouldn't have enough power. This was Bella's plan. The black-haired girl was stunned. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Bella said, "There's no such thing as a perfectly correct value system in the world. You're just imposing your own sense of justice on others. Perhaps you need to stop and think about your own actions and whether they are right or wrong." Meanwhile, The male lead's parents' house is surrounded by a horde of zombies. The flimsy door is about to give way. Just in the nick of time, the male lead arrives with a hoe. He fends off the zombies surrounding the doorway, securing the entrance. He reveals his feelings to his parents inside the house. He hasn't had a chance to show his filial piety yet. He hasn't received a promotion or raise to earn a lot of money to send home. He hasn't taken them on an overseas trip either. He hasn't even found a spouse yet. And he hasn't fulfilled their wish of having grandchildren. There are so many things he hasn't done yet. It'll be too late to show filial piety after they're in their coffins. While my parents are still healthy now, there are many things I want to do for them. The father was deeply moved by these words. He picked up the hoe nearby and opened the gate. He pulled the male protagonist, who was guarding the door, into the house. If you say you want to show filial piety to your parents, then you can't die before they do. Seeing the zombie horde slowly approaching his father, the male protagonist wanted to go out and help, but his father stopped him. But after opening the door, his mother and the others would also be in danger. He'd worked as a farmer all his life, and he didn't have much things. He only possessed immense strength. Dealing with a mere group of stiff-necked fools was nothing to him. But unfortunately, suffering from a serious illness, he didn't last even 2.5 minutes. A sudden wave of pain struck him. At that critical moment, Himura suddenly saved the protagonist's father. The protagonist didn't understand. Why would he, as the villain, save his father? Little did he know, Himura had been thinking. The male lead has always been incredibly lucky. What do I have to do to turn you into a zombie? Well, here's my chance. Using the male lead's father as leverage.